It's my son. I love him. There's no way I'm sending him to jail, and I have the power to avoid it. Nobody would blame him for that. But that's not where he went. So I didn't have a problem to answer your question directly with the decision that he made to pardon his son. Boo Boo the Fool knew he was going to do that. I don't care who he stood in front of or sat in front of and said that he wasn't going to pardon his son and he was just going to go by the letter of the law. Please, everybody and their grandmother knew he was going to pardon his son. But to come out and to start talking about how it's been a witch hunt and the Department of Justice and others were after him or whoever it was, and, you know, the GOP rather was after him. Well, wait a minute. What have y'all been doing with Donald Trump all of these years? Now, you can make an argument about the legitimacy of the cases against Donald Trump compared to what wasn't legitimate, et cetera. That's not the point. The point is it was clearly politicized. You had folks on the left who were hell-bent on going after Donald Trump because they were determined to make sure that he couldn't run for re-election or that these elements would get in the way of him possibly winning re-election. And now we know why more than ever, because they weren't confident they would ever be able to beat him. And so for him to come out and to talk about that this was a witch hunt when clearly it could be argued that's exactly what you were doing to Donald Trump, or you assisted in doing, seems beyond hypocritical. And that was what disgusted me. It wasn't his decision. It wasn't him pardoning his son. It was the weak, pathetic explanation that he gave, which has most critics just shaking their heads and raising their eyebrows and saying, what nerve you have.
Let's get ready to rumble! You can't handle the truth. Somebody on the top of the line.
Well, it's day number 2 of the aftermath of Joe Biden pardoning his son. And of course, the meltdown on the left is now beginning to waft into a different narrative, that obviously it's understandable that he would do this for his son. Well, we all knew he was going to do this. It was the liberals who for months trying to ride this high moral ground that our guy is for law and order. Donald Trump is only for himself. Well, that narrative got blown up when Joe Biden did what everybody knew he was going to do, pardon his son. You've got members of the media trying to grapple with the fact that they were perpetuating that lie, and it is a lie. And now you've got them trying to now, they always take that one day where they realize, they've been caught, and now they're trying to spin it. And the one that's doing the most spin on this, the one and only Karine Jean-Pierre. I call her the Black Shirley Temple, the White House press secretary.
But from a presidential perspective, is there any possibility that the president would end up pardoning his son?
No.
Well,
I just said no. I just answered.
The president would not pardon or commute sentences for his son, Hunter. I just want to make sure that that is not going to change over the next 6 months. The president's saying he would not.
It's still a no. It's still a no.
It will always be a no.
It's still a no. It will be a no. It is a no, and I don't have anything else to add. Will he pardon his son? No.
His son, Hunter, is also up for being sentenced next month. Does the president have any intention of pardoning him?
We've been asked that question multiple times. Our answer stands, which is no.
President Biden says that he's not going to pardon his son, Hunter. Is he going to ask Donald Trump to do that?
I don't have anything else to share about that. I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole on this. I've been very clear. The president's been very clear when we've been asked this question.
Well, that's what she said literally for weeks, for months, not answering this, not getting into this. Well, finally, a reporter caught up with her on Air Force One, and so we don't have visual, we only have audio, and here's what she's saying now.
You have said repeatedly yourself since the election, the president has said for months, no pardon was coming. I wanted to ask you, could those statements now be seen as lies from the American people? Is there really a credibility issue here given now this announcement?
First of all, one of the things that the president always believes is to be truthful to the American people. That is something that he always truly believes. And if you see the end of his, I assume that you've read his statement, and you look at the end of that statement, and he actually says that in the first line in the last paragraph, and respects the thinking and how the American people will actually see this in his decision making. And I would encourage everyone to read in full the president's statement. I think he lays out his thought process. He lays out how he came to this decision. He came to this decision this weekend. So let's be very clear about that. He says it himself. It's in his voice. He said he came to this decision this weekend. And he said he wrestled with this. And because he believes in the justice system, but he also believes that the war politics infected the process and led to a miscarriage of justice.
Of course, this was always on the table. I didn't lie. The president didn't lie. The circumstances change. It's obvious they were never going to stop coming after Hunter, and the only way for this to end was for the president to enact a 10-year sweeping immunity.
The president's pardon is sweeping, covering not just those charges, but any uncharged crimes between 2014 and 2024.
Yes, it just happens to cover all those years that Vice President Joe Obama was, allowing his influence as vice president to be bought and paid for by Ukraine through Burisma payments to Hunter that then got forwarded on to the big guy. Yeah. And just remember, if your son does cocaine, he's going to prison. If Joe Biden's son does cocaine, he gets off scot-free. That's what's got people so enraged. And the fact that the real committed liberals that really suffer from Trump derangement syndrome, they understand what this means. That when Donald Trump pardons people, if anybody gives him any flack, especially over the J6 insurrectionists, he only has to look at the gaggle of reporters and just say two words: Hunter Biden. But what's interesting is they're now saying, you know what Joe Biden ought to do? He ought to pardon Donald Trump.
You know what else Biden should do? And I know people are going to get upset about this, but just think about it before you go crazy on me. Not you, everybody else. If I were he, I would pardon Trump.
You know something? Honestly,
I would say
honestly,
this
as
has gotta
crazy as this
stop.
sounds, Chris,
Chris,
that's exactly what I would do. That's exactly what I would do. Enough's enough. You know what? You're the Democrats. You lost the election. You got your butt whipped. You couldn't prevent him from going back to the White House. More than a dozen cases have been dropped against him. The cases that have been ruled against him, he's going to appeal, and he'll probably get off from having to deal with all of that. It's time to move forward. Gerald Ford could have let Nixon suffer. You know to say he didn't let that happen. Why? Because it was for the good of the country. The whole hanging Chads issue in 2000 between George W. Bush and Al Gore. Gore could have dragged it on. He didn't. It was for the better of the country. And a lot of times these folks speak about this stuff, but they don't do what they say they're going to do and what they implore others to do, which is where the disgust elevates exponentially for Washington, D.C., because we know they're full of it most of the time. And today was the latest example of that.
Now, some on the conservative side are saying this would be a bad idea because, after all these court cases are now going away. And if Joe Biden did this on his way out the door, he would be able to say that Donald Trump would be in prison if it wasn't for me. Yeah, nobody's listening to anything Joe Biden says with any ounce of credibility, especially now. I really do think that this was the ultimate middle finger to the left. Again, everyone knows that Joe Biden is salty about the way they pulled off this coup to get him to step aside. And so then he thwarted their plan by giving his full endorsement to Kamala Harris, knowing full well she wasn't going to be able to beat Donald Trump, that she didn't have the political talent and the savvy to pull this off. Look how they burned through $1.5 billion. $1.5 billion. And remember, that's just under the 100 days that Kamala was the front runner, the nominee for the Democrats. It is estimated another $1 billion was spent over the past year plus on Joe Biden's campaign. So the Democrat donors literally ponied up over $2 billion with zero to show for it. We know that there were steps that Joe Biden took along the way to let everybody know he wasn't happy. Things like wearing a MAGA hat. Things like his little Trump supporters are garbage on the very night that Kamala is supposed to be giving her big speech to close the deal with America from the front lawn of the White House. And the next day, nobody in the news cycle was talking about her speech. None of those sound clips were ever seen nor heard from again because everybody was talking about Joe Biden calling half of America garbage and then Donald Trump having the ultimate meme arriving at one of his rallies wearing a garbage vest after having rode there in a garbage truck. Campaigns are about sound bites and optics, and Donald Trump knows how to master that. I'm telling you, Joe Biden welcoming Donald Trump to the White House literally a week after his re-election. Really, you're welcoming Hitler, Mussolini, fascism, Nazism all rolled into one in the White House and welcomed him back, said how glad he was to see him, that we're friends, we're co-workers, and we're going to make a smooth transition here. I'm telling you, Joe Biden voted for Donald Trump. And again, pardoning Hunter. Again, the liberal establishment media that have carried this water for this guy. First, that he wasn't, there was no mental cognitive problem. Everything's okay. You're seeing the best version of Joe Biden, the best version ever. And then, of course, we find out, nope, Nate, sorry, wrong answer. Then they've been wanting to talk about, Donald Trump and the lawfare and all of this stuff coming at him, and it was the Supreme Court that bailed him out and blah, 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 blah. And look, Joe Biden is for justice. He's for law and order. No one is above the law. And then he issues the sweeping pardon. His final middle finger to the left, to the people that wanted him gone, to Nancy Botox Pelosi, to Barack Obama, to Chuck E. Cheese Schumer, to Camilla thinks she's a hottie Harris. Pardon Donald Trump.